Protective Services Supervisor in Wicomico County. I have been in Child Protective Services now in Wicomico County come September 2nd for 27 years. I know, I see people shaking their heads already. I can't decide if I'm a martyr or crazy. I don't know which.
Just dedicated.
Yes, dedicated. There you go. I do have with me Detective Sergeant Martin Fisher. He's with the Sheriff's Office. He'll be either helping to interject with what I'm talking about, and he will also do the second half of this. So he's, I tend to be the serious one. He tends to be my humorous opposite. So you ought to have a lot of fun this morning. I don't use PowerPoints. I don't like them. I find them boring. I also find that people, when I do presentations, tend to be able to read. And so for me to stand here and point at PowerPoints and read to you doesn't make me comfortable, and doesn't always make it a good learning experience for the group. I welcome questions. I prefer questions. The bottom line is I have 27 years of knowledge stuffed into this brain of mine, and I'm here for your benefit, not mine, right? And so if you need to pluck some information out of my head, please ask. We got that straight? Everybody good with that? Okay. Couple of things that Dr. Seifert really wanted me to hit on today. The first one being assessing for physical and emotional safety of children in the home. Now, that could be a foster home or their own biological home. Okay? So I got to thinking about this. A few years ago in our county, we had an unfortunate incident where a foster child was killed in our county. Not Worcester County, in our county. And whenever anything tragic happens, we all try to regroup and say, okay, is there anything that we could do better for future use, and trying to assess for the safety and well-being of children, regardless whether it be in a foster home or their own biological home. A couple of things that we thought about was, I think we make an assumption, please correct me if you think I'm wrong, that if a child's in a foster home, we assume they're safe. Because these people have been vested in some way. I personally I'm SAFE certified. I've subcontracted with my agency to do safe home studies. So I've been a part of that process as well. But we assume if you're in a foster home, you're safe. Right? And in your own biological home, you're much more likely to not be safe for some reason. So a lot of times when we do assessments of children's circumstances, we're a lot more willing to ask hard questions in a child's biological home versus their foster home. And so we're always looking to improve ourselves. So I came up with a list of questions. I'm always happy to share these with anybody who would like them. We're going to talk about some of them. I want to plant some ideas in your minds about some things that we could think about looking at when we're assessing the physical and emotional safety. You can be physically safe in a home all day long, but emotionally be very traumatized in the circumstance. So I want to reiterate that we're really kind of trying to look at both sides of that coin, okay? I don't know if you have the ability to copy this. I can always email it to you. You can disperse it out if people are interested in these questions.
Email it to me,
Okay.
and I'll get it to Heather, and Heather will
Disperse
make sure
out.
that they have binders, and so having that information in the binders would be good.
I think one of the things that happens with foster care staff, and we do have some here, and they can certainly nod if they like or interject. I think one of the things that sometimes unfortunately happens is people get kind of compartmentalized in their own units in DSS. Child Protective Services or CPS, you know, we're the investigators and we go in there and we're digging around asking all kinds of questions, and that's par for the course on what we're expected to do. We're the tough people. We ask the tough questions. In-home staff or foster care staff may sometimes, the impression might be that they're more friendly visitors. Hi, how you doing? Is everything going okay? That's anything I can do for you kind of thing. And so after we had this tragedy, we talked amongst ourselves and got some input from the various units and talked about how can we ask some harder questions to determine whether or not children are safe or not. So, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and read off all these questions, but we'll talk about some of them. I think one of the things that we have to remember is that we have to talk to these children individually, not as a group. We have to talk to them away from their caregiver. Okay, I think it's that's one of your most important things, is that you have to do that. I'm also not talking about the caregivers in the kitchen and you go out to do a visit and you pull them off to the side. Okay? Would you all be put off a little bit if we got a CPS investigation where a child's leg was broken and I go in the home and the child's sitting in the living room in the wheelchair with their leg broken, okay? Mom's in the kitchen fixing dinner, and I'm like, I'm going to go in there and interview your child. Everybody's going, no, why would you do such a thing? Well, if you're going to look at the safety and well-being of children, even in a, you know, whatever kind of home they're in, why would you do the same thing? So we need to be talking to these kids away from their home environment and their caregiver. Okay? Talk about, ask the child how things are going. Now, I've raised kids, I've been around kids, I know how kids are. You ask a teenager how things going. What's their usual response? Fine. What have you been up to? Nothing. Anything you need? No. Anything important happening?
No.
No. There you go. Okay. You know, how are we going to get past that? What are some strategies that we can use to try to get past that? You know, one of the things, they have to know that they can trust you. I'm a big believer in being right up front. Okay? If you're a mandated reporter and you know that if the child discloses some sort of maltreatment, abuse, or neglect to you, and you have to report it, tell them that up front. You don't establish trust by saying, oh my God, you've told me something and now I've got to report it. You tell them up front. Okay? Ask them what their grades are like. Grades are sometimes an indication, unless they have some sort of other learning disability, you know, over the course of time, are their grades dropping? That's a real indicator, even if they're not telling you something's going on, that something's going on. Okay? How are they getting along with their peers in school? I doubt if you ask a 15-year-old boy if he's being bullied in school, he's going to say yes. Would you agree? Try to think of some other ways of finding out what's going on. Have you gotten any suspensions? Typically, suspensions occur because you've been fighting. If you've been fighting, why are you fighting? What's going on? Okay? Ask this child how they're getting along with each and every household member. Okay? Are there any other conflicts with other children in the house? Conflicts with either caregiver. Conflicts with the caregiver's relatives who are coming in and out. Talk to them about their relationship with these people. Okay? Not just a general, how are things going in the house? Okay? Try to get specific with that. A trick of the trade that I used to use when I was working in the field was I'd be chatting with a child in school and I'd say, can you name me your 3 most favorite things about your mom? They give me candy. They tuck me in and kiss me goodnight. You know, whatever it is. I don't care what it is. You tell me your 3 favorite things about your mom. You tell me your 3 favorite things about your dad, stepdad, mom's boyfriend, whoever, doesn't matter. I'd ask them to tell me what their favorite things were. Then I'd ask them, tell me several things that you either don't like. It depends on the age of the child. You know these kids better, than I do. It depends on their vernacular. Either they're not likely to say, they're not going to say, there's not 3 things I don't like about my mom. Are there any things that you would like to see different? Because that's a different type of question for them. It's a little bit easier to say, yeah, I'd really like it if mom would stop drinking so much. I really wish mom wouldn't get drunk on Friday nights. Because you're asking the child, is there something different? You're not asking the child to attack the parent by saying, I don't like this about mom. Okay? So there's some different ways of getting around that to get to the answers that you'd like. Ask this child about how the caregivers are getting along. Okay? Because, married couples, intimate partners, they argue, they fuss, they fight, they cheat on each other, they slap each other, they, have financial problems, all that sort of stuff. I don't know why it is, but parents seem to think the kids don't hear them, that they don't understand what's going on. Well, we never fight in front of kids. Well, you're screaming in the back bedroom, the walls are thin, they hear you. The fussing and carrying on, even if it's just loud conversation about finances. What do you mean you lost your job? How in the heck are we supposed to pay these bills? Kids hear that. That caregiver might not be willing to tell you that, but the child's heard it. So there's some stressors going on in the family that you, as the professional or the caseworker assigned to the case, need to know about so that you can assist this family if need be. Okay? Are there any changes in the caregiver? You have some caregivers who are single. Do they have a new boyfriend, girlfriend? Anybody staying over a lot? If this is a foster home and the foster parent has a new intimate partner, we have to know about that. They might say, he doesn't live here, but his shoes are parked under the bed, and he's got half the closet, okay? But he doesn't live here. Call it what you want. I don't care if he's staying over 3-4 nights a week. At least from a DSS perspective, we must know that. Okay? Who's taking you to your doctor's appointments? Who's taking you to your therapy appointments? Who's picking you up from school? Don't assume it's the caregiver. Okay? Are they involved in any extracurricular activities? We've had some real unfortunate circumstances in some foster homes where, the foster parents, for whatever reason, won't pay for a child to be involved in basketball. They don't want to put out the money for the basketball. Because it's not just the basketball fees, it's the basketball uniforms, it's the tennis shoes, it's driving them back and forth to practice, all the things that go along with a child being involved in extracurricular activities. Are these kids doing anything besides just going to school and coming home? We're talking about emotional well-being as well. Are they allowed to go to a birthday party? When's the last time you've been to any birthday parties, depending on the age? When's the last time you were allowed to go to the mall? When's the last time you were taken to a theme park, Ocean City, a movie, or anything else? Like I said, you can have a clean house, you can feed a child, you can, do a lot of the right things, but this child is not allowed to do anything social. And socialization, having friends, all that sort of stuff is one of the things that makes us well-rounded human beings, does it not? Right? Okay. I think it's also depending on the age of the child, a good idea to say, on a scale of 1 to 5, we're using this, the faces, the smiley face, the sad face, the tear faces. How safe and secure do you feel in your home? Can you rate it for me? If it's plus, tell me a couple things that make you feel safe. Well, my mom always locks the doors at night, so my brother's friends can't come in and take our stuff. That tells you something, doesn't it? Tells you a whole lot of stuff. Okay? I don't feel safe. Can you tell me why? Well, my mom thinks I don't know that she sneaks out at night and nobody's home but me and my sibling. Or sister, brother. They usually don't say sibling. And I'm scared about whether or not she's going to come back home in the morning. That tells you a lot too, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So there's some ways of asking those kinds of questions if you really want to start looking at the physical and emotional safety of children in their home. Questions, comments? Yes?
I'm just curious now, for you who are in the foster care system, how forthcoming do you believe some of those who are when these questions are being asked? And the other reason I ask that is because, being someone in foster care, the question I have is, could they possibly be fearful that if I answer some of these questions in a certain way, that I'll be removed from this home?
Yep.
And I'm being provided for. I have a roof over my head.
Yep.
I'm being fed.
Don't want to get snatched up and have my clothes thrown in a trash bag. Yes. I can't answer that. You're right. You're absolutely right. We see kids, we had another huge media case in our county with some foster parents. And, children tolerated a lot of really bad behavior towards them. They really tolerated a lot because of that very same thing. The older the child, the longer they've been in the system, the harder it is for them to say, yeah, X, Y, and Z is going on. Because I'll never forget the assistant director that we had prior to the one we have right now, his pet peeve was children who are being removed from their biological home or being moved from one foster home to another, that their clothes would be in a trash bag. He absolutely was adamant that we would not move a child's clothes in a trash bag. So he was pretty instrumental in getting tote bags and that sort of stuff, because there's just something symbolic about moving your clothes in a trash bag. Okay? I don't have a good answer. I wish I did. Yes.
It is part of the point that we don't assume that children are safe in a foster care
That's
home,
correct.
that we're asking the
That's
questions that
We don't make that assumption. Foster parents, guess what? They're human. You got something?
Well, yeah,
Please do.
yeah, I'm not gonna stand, guys. I got a big voice too.
Yes, you do.
But what Jessica touched on, and that's something that I was gonna speak on in my part. Basically, our jobs are the same. I'm a detective sergeant. That's just my rank. But everybody working in the foster care system, and this is coming from a law enforcement perspective. I don't want to offend anybody. I do that from time to time, and if I do, I'm going to give you a number to call to report me. That's my cell phone. And there's a voice in there, not mine. But anyway, seriously, if you're detectives, you are basically detectives. You may not be police, but you are detectives. These children aren't going to be forthcoming for a lot of reasons. Look at the environment they came out of. They're already desensitized. A lot of these children suffer PTSD, a lot of disorders. They come from dysfunctional homes, and they are easy victims because of that fear of being moved, and tracking them is another thing. And you know, I don't want to speak on that right now. I'll talk about that later. But tracking these kids, that's your job. And I know that sounds crazy, but you know, yeah, police, we're detectives. We look for violations of law, but good detectives don't just look for violations. You look for anything that's inconsistent, and that's what you need to look for. And if you see it, you suspect it, go with your gut, call somebody, because these kids are easy targets for predators because they've been in the system.
And you know, I don't work directly in the foster care unit. I'm in the CPS unit, and I unfortunately was involved in having to remove children from their homes. And I have to tell you, they don't. And trust me when I tell you, they don't say, "Oh, good, Miss Thompson, I'm happy to go with you." I've had children screaming, clawing at me, crying, holding their arms out for their parent, and as I'm, you know, having to drag them out of their house. So this notion that children are skipping along coming with me to get out of this bad environment is not correct. I can promise you that. I try to imagine, even as a strong, independent adult, that somebody's going to come and take me from my house and have me gather up a few belongings in a trash bag, and I get in the stranger's car, and then the stranger drops me off at somebody's house that I don't know, and this is where you're going to stay. I really try hard to put myself there. I can't, but just to the best of my ability, I think about what that would feel like for me. And this is what we're doing to kids. And then we're coming back in saying, is everything going okay? I get it. You're right. So, you know, one of the things that we could possibly do is, when we're talking to these children's caregivers, ask them some of the same stuff. See if there's some inconsistencies. Okay? How is little Johnny getting along with the other people in the household? Can you be specific? How is he doing in school? What kind of extracurricular activities do you have him or her signed up for? Who's transporting this child back and forth? Start seeing if the stories match. You know, we've had cases where foster parents will tell us all the right things. That's not what's going on. How are you and your intimate partner, your spouse getting along. Oh, everything's peachy keen. Really? Okay. You know, we need to relook at your financial situation. Check them on case search. Check everybody on case search. Oh, you filed a temporary restraining order last month but dropped it. What does that tell you? Okay. I know we oftentimes will call the local police department and say, how many calls for service have you had out to this house? Nobody got arrested, but you had calls for service, meaning there was some sort of disturbance or something going on. The police showed up. Oh no, officer, everything's okay. Nobody has an injury. They leave. Even that call for service tells you a lot. I looked up one foster parent. He had gotten stopped 5 times for DUI. His pockets must have been empty because he never got a conviction in terms of paying lawyers' fees. Okay? But getting stopped 5 times said a whole lot to me. And because he wasn't convicted, he didn't get a hit, which didn't come back to us saying, oh, your foster parent got a hit. You see? So there's things that we have to look at. You can't assume because they weren't arrested that they didn't do something they shouldn't have been doing in the first place. Okay? And I'm also a big believer, maybe it's because of what we do. It depends on what it is, but I'm very leery. If there was enough to arrest you, quite honestly, I don't really care if you were convicted, because I know what it takes to arrest you in the first place. I'm going to be real curious about what's been going on. Okay? Questions about this? Marty, anything seriously?
I got first serious one. I don't not particularly, I think it's pretty covered, but I do, you can contact us. If you contact the Child Advocacy Center, we can run checks on residents for you, and I can't give you dates of birth, social security numbers, that would be a violation, but I make sure my cops, and we are a task force, if you're familiar with the unit, we have state troopers, city, county police there, CPS, life crisis, it's the concept of a CDC, I'm sure you all know what they are. And the cops there, I call them socio-cops, because they're not the ones on the street corner on people. They're up there. They learn to work with CPS. They're doing what law enforcement really is designed to be doing, and that is helping people. That's our job. Our job, it's always been serve and protect. And I'm not going to give a sermon about police because we've all dealt with good and bad ones. We've dealt with good and bad laws for parents. I'm not going to sit here and say all cops are good because they're not. That'd be a lie. So anyway, contact us. Our guys up there understand what you're doing. And if you're making a call, I call it that gut feeling, and policemen really develop it, and so do social service people. That feeling when you're walking up to a door that something isn't right, that's your subconscious mind telling you. You may not see it, but your subconscious mind is telling you something's not right here. I can't tell you how many times in my career I've walked up to a car, walked up to someone, and had a bad feeling, and they ended up having a gun, or they were wanted for a very serious crime. But follow your gut. Never ignore it. That's something I would add. If you feel like something's going on in that house, probably your subconscious mind, your training, and your experiences have told you there's something wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and call us. We will check. We'll help. And if you have a problem calling a police agency in your jurisdiction, trust me, I have no problem. I got 27 years on like Pam.
Mm-hmm.
We've both been doing this a long time. I've worked every aspect. I've been major violators. I've vacillated back and forth between the CAC. No cop really wants to go up there because they don't like working challenges. And we don't get media attention. Our arrests stay, we protect our victims. And police aren't used to that. My boss likes to stand on the bypass and hold up 10 pounds of cocaine and hold the guy by the collar and say, "Who's your dad?" On a video.
You know that stuff.
I know. Mike knows I say this. Mike is from Wycomico County, his zip code is EIEIO. He was raised here. He's funny. I was raised in Baltimore City. I'm a project kid. That's a fact. My mom raised 4 of us by herself, all over Baltimore. So I have been on both sides of this. I've had social workers knocking on my door as a kid, and now I'm working with them. So, but I do know, where these kids are coming from because I did grow up in low-income housing in Baltimore. Made my way out playing sports where Pam was talking about extracurricular activities. That's huge. That's huge because if I wasn't in the police athletic league, if I didn't do things and people pushed me in those directions, including people from social services, I'd probably be in prison right now. I wouldn't be a cop out of 27 years, or I'd be dead like a lot of my friends I know from back there are dead. So sports kept me in a position. I mean, I tell it like it is. I had my mom, God bless her, all the kids we turned out fine. My brother retired from Baltimore City. My sister worked for the federal government. Whatever she did it right. But there was a time in our life where she could go for a gallon of milk on Sunday and come back Wednesday. That's a long old trip. But so, I've been there, so I've seen it. But we all survived it. But the point is, follow your gut, these kids. What you're doing influences their future. I mean, if you don't do your job, they're not going to grow up and be who they're supposed to be. If they're being placed in foster care, something went south. You know what I mean? So you guys got a tough job. It's not an easy job.
Other questions about safety? Anybody can think of, want to add? That's all right.
Is there a legal number of foster kids that a foster parent is allowed to have?
Yes.
Where's that number?
I don't know that off the top of my
Okay.
head, but yes. Ah,
It's just for treatment levels.
For treatment levels, was that regular, was that non-treatment?
Depends on the state.
Okay, so there's.
Every child has to have a space. They have to have room for the bed, the dresser, things like that. But it depends on the size of the home, depends on how many they can be licensed for. You can always make exceptions for larger sibling groups if you can keep them together. But it really just depends on the house
and no bunk bed.
and no bunk bed.
I do know that. No bunk beds. Hold on one second. Yes.
You said you've been doing this for 27 years?
Yes.
I have a question to your opinion.
Okay.
My name's Mark. I actually became a social worker initially to enter the CPS field, and I did CPS interning in New York, but I've ended up in foster care. I personally have always had a very unforgiving attitude towards child abusers, especially biological parents who have lost custody because CPS has removed their kids due to physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect. But the system is very much designed for rehabilitation, family reunification.
Yes, it is.
The first 15 to 18 months of a foster child existence is give the bio family a chance to get them back. And before you came, about 30 minutes ago, we actually met a foster child who told us one of the things that she wanted most was her family to move heaven and earth to get me back. It would be nice if my biological parents went the extra mile. After all, I'm your kid. You should want to get me back.
That's right.
From your perspective, because I don't know exactly, I know New York better than I know Maryland and CPS.
Okay.
For how long the CPS worker remains involved with a child after they've been removed, or whether their case is transferred to a in-home worker, a family preservation worker. But from your perspective, is the system fair to parents trying to regain custody? Are the hoops they've got to jump through reasonable? Are they, and in a long term that you've been doing this, when a child has been removed due to abuse or neglect, how often does it end with the perpetrator participating in rehab, going through the motions, proving to the court that
Mark, you got a vote now. Hold on a minute.
How does the system work in regards to, I'm unforgiving to the child abuser, but I know that the system is designed to reunify them, get them back, biological families get them better. I'll stop.
It's all right. Well, what I can say is this. Child welfare. Okay? Child protective service. Our first priority is children. Children, in my experience, want their family. And because that's what they want, that's what I owe them first. Despite any feelings I might have about their parent or what their parent has done. So I'm lucky enough to where I feel like I'm very forgiving about some of the things that parents do because I'm compelled to look beyond the surface of what they did and get down in there and say, talk to me about why you're using a violent child. Talk to me about that. Oh, that's what your parent did. That's what your grandparents did. Talk to me about the addiction that takes you out of your house and has you sell your food stamps and not buy food for your kids. Talk to me about that. Because most of the physical abuse cases that we see, quite honestly, about that percentage of them are parents who are just downright mean-spirited and are beating their kid for the fun of it. Most parents who involve themselves in using excessive physical discipline and makes their case come to our attention, in my opinion, because that's what you asked for, they're overzealous, they're uneducated about what discipline would and should really mean, okay? They're frustrated, they got a lot of other things going on, but when you ask them, why did you beat this child with a belt? They'll say to you, I'm not going to raise a street thug. I'm not going to raise a criminal. I'm not going to raise a drug dealer. So their intention is not just, I hate this kid so I'm beating him today. Their intention is good. It's the way they go about it that needs to be reworked. Does the system work? I have to tell you, over the course of time, I have seen improvement. I think we always need improvement. Back in the day when I was first in the field removing kids, quite honestly, you knew that when you removed somebody's child, you probably were never getting them back. Because the hoops that parents had to go through were too much for them. They were too much for them. Okay? Now, over the course of time, we work so hard not to remove. We work so hard to have family involvement meetings, involve sixth of kin, other types of relatives, other people in a child's life that can step in. That if it gets to the point where we actually have to remove the child, I still think they have a lot of fair opportunity to get their child back. That's my perspective. I'm certain that wouldn't be the parent's perspective. They probably don't think they have a fair chance to get their child back. Does that answer right?
So the system's gotten better and more.
I
fair.
personally think so, looking at the long haul, over the years that I've been there. I used to feel really bad because, like I said, once we remove children, especially if you take somebody that comes from a lot of dysfunction themselves, they've got some addictions, there's some poverty issues going on. Once I remove their child, for them to clean all of that up, to pass our certification, I knew they weren't going to get their child back. You knew they weren't going to be able to rise to all that. They just weren't. You know, and that's very unfortunate. And I can tell you, I've been there long enough now where I've seen foster children who are now adults. Guess where they go? Even the ones who are adopted, guess where they go? Right back to their family. Always. It's frustrating that they go back to their family.
Well, it's
I understand it. I don't know if it's always the healthiest thing for them emotionally, but I get it. People tend to gravitate. I mean, you look at adopted children who've been raised by a really nice family, so to speak. They want to know who gave birth to me, where did I come from? So I think it's kind of timeless that we want to know the folks that we came from. For some reason, as humans want to know who we belong to. Yeah, who we belong to. Because there's a sense if I gave birth to you, you belong to me. All right. Did you still have a question?
If I did.
It's long gone.
It's long gone.
All right. One of the other things that you had wanted me to and you got my time. I don't want to put step on your. All right. Was I think it was put down as domestic violence. I just went last week. We're now calling it lethality assessment protocol. Okay. Intimate partner violence versus domestic violence. It is the same thing. As Department of Human Resources has always been concerned about the effect that violence in the household has on children. There's been a new policy that will go into effect across the state come this October 1st. That policy has all child welfare and adult welfare staff trained in lethality assessment using the lethality assessment tool developed by Jacqueline Campbell. It's a screening tool that we are to use. Now, keeping in mind that this lethality assessment is about the adult victim's safety in that moment. Okay? There's some very specific things that we're going to be called upon to do as caseworkers to help try to address that. It's typically a female safety at that time. The assessment of children is different. It's expected to occur also at the same time, but it's different. We're to use this very specific screening tool. Are you familiar with this?
Mm-hmm.
For the adult victim. I will tell you that if we get a call in CPS that there's intimate partner violence or domestic violence in a household, if the children haven't been hit or injured, okay, there was a period of time when they were not accepted for CPS investigation, okay? Now those cases are being accepted, if not for CPS investigation or a CPS response, they are accepted as what is categorized as risk of harm cases, with a focus for the CPS staff not so much to investigate what's going on, but to do an assessment of what's going on and try to establish safety for the victim as well as the kids. Any question? You were just shifting. I thought you had a question. Oh, okay.
See what I deal with?
Yeah. And I just want to add a comment from the psychological perspective. repeated
Mm.
domestic violence in the home, even if the children are not hit,
Right.
does cause psychological harm to the children. Period. End of discussion. And so, always further investigation, in my opinion, is always warranted. And one of the biggest things that causes damage in those situations is that the children do not develop the skills they need to cope with the world because they're coping with the violence in the home. And that's one of the most damaging things that can happen to those children. So it's my soapbox, folks. I'm up here, so I get to say it. If there's domestic violence in the home, it needs further investigation.
And I do not disagree. I think, like I said, sometimes it can boil down to semantics and whether it's investigation or assessment.
Right.
I will tell you, we do have a category of child maltreatment that is mental injury. I will tell you, it's a very difficult thing to prove, mental injury. Unfortunately, the circumstance has to go on for a long time and already cause psychological damage before Department of Social Services can accept it as a mental injury case. Bottom line is damage is already done. I don't disagree with you one single bit. I grew up, thankfully, in an Aussie, believe it or not, I really honestly did grow up in an Ozzie and Harriet type of environment. My parents are still married. Never heard them yell, argue. Never heard anybody cuss at each other. Never saw anybody put their hands on each other. So I can't even imagine what that's like, yes.
Investigation process. Let's say I just call one day and say, like, every morning my neighbor kid is screaming, it sounds like the mom's beating them, like, and just call them report. Then what happens from there?
If we accept that,
So how do you determine? Like,
well, we have to meet the criteria that's set forth in COMAR. Okay? People are allowed to use corporal punishment. Okay? We have to look at whether they've left injuries, the significance of the injuries, the age of the child. There's a lot of different factors
so
going
how
on.
would you determine that though?
Well, based on what you're telling me, my neighbor's kid's screaming all the time. We don't know what they're screaming about. Correct? We may not be able to accept it. What we could say to you is, would you feel comfortable calling 911 the next time you hear that going on and having the police respond? And see if there's anything going on that we need to be getting involved in.
And you would start investigation
We
based on what
could.
the police have to do.
Yeah.
And let me add to
Okay.
that, if you guys make that call, because what Pam's talking about, the intake process, that case may get screened out. And from a law enforcement perspective, the terminology you want to use as foster care professionals, if you will, that'll get the cop's attention because it is a reported line, and let's face it, just like cops, we're not all perfect. Some of these 911 operators, you want to, I'm serious, it's like TV. I just attended a training with the FBI up in Baltimore on human trafficking. And a girl, actually a runaway foster child who was trying to escape her pet, called 911 in New York City and said, I need the police here. This man brought me from DC to New York. And anyway, for 10 minutes, this operator talked to her. And in the interim, the pen came down and she hung up. She ended up in his custody, if you will, for another 6 months or whatever it was. So use the word check welfare. That's a catchphrase for police officers. You call into a police department, and you can remain anonymous. And if they start demanding your information, you do not have to give it to them. It's good if you do. But the minute you say, I'm the Department of Social Services, what are they going to say? Go check it yourself. I'm serious. Seriously, that's going to be the police's attitude. So what you want to do is say, I'm such and such, and I want you to check the welfare. Well, what's going on? Well, I hear this kid crying all the time, and it's usually about the same time. It's just odd. And the police will go there and they can make entry, you know, they can't get around, but they're not, and they can demand to see the child, make sure the child's okay. And if they see something, they'll call us. But, so that's how that would work. We use the term check welfare, because that is a cop term, that's police talk for something might be going on. If you say the kid's just crying, we're gonna go, oh, really? Okay. Say check welfare. Use that term, check for welfare, because that now puts liability on the police to do our job.
Sexual contact amongst children in the home. That was one of the other topics we were asked to touch on. Okay? Seems to be a topic of concern. I see head shaking. Okay. What is it you guys want to know?
Will, I have a family in Somerset County that is dealing with this, and a lot of us in here have been dealing with this for, will be a year in October, longer than that. It's probably been going on, but we had found out about it at the end of October, beginning of November. Will that child, as long as, so it was a sibling who, whether molested, raped, however way we want to look at it, got caught having sex with their younger sibling.
Okay.
It was found out that it was both the younger siblings. He
Okay.
was
Okay.
penetrated. So will that child be allowed to come back into the home with the other two children in that house? Let's say he gets through, whatever treatment that he is going through right now. Will that be an option for that child to return back to the home while the two children are in there? In a CPS perspective.
Well, CPS would not have a perspective about that.
I'm asking you as your expertise of years, kind of put the spotlight on you.
Go ahead.
Well, said
You're using
CPS.
an adult who do that, where she's talking about a child who has done that,
Mhm.
right? So you
Yeah.
don't have perspective because the perpetrator or respondent is a victim, not an adult.
No, we do children on children.
You do?
All the
Yes,
time,
we
every
do.
day.
Because one of the things that, if stepdad molests stepdaughter, we're clear that that's a familial type relationship, household relationship, relative relationship. So are brother and sister, they're relatives. Now, I will tell you that when it comes to children having sexual contact with each other, we do have a special clause in COMA to deal with that. Let's say, for instance, that you have a 10-year-old boy that puts his penis in his 5-year-old sister's vagina. The 5-year-old sister tells you this, the 10-year-old boy says, yes, I did do that. So there's no question that this occurred at all. Now, if this were stepdad and the 5-year-old, we'd have an arrest. We'd have an indicated child abuse. Child said it happened. Perpetrator said it is so. But when it's child on child, there's a special category for that, and there's good reason. Now, this is where I get on my soapbox. We all have them.
I have one too.
We all have them.
I'm next.
From a CPS perspective, in a sex abuse case, I'm called upon to make a ruling or a finding against a perpetrator in addition to an assessment about whether or not people are safe in the home right now, because I only have case 60 days, and where does the case need to go from here? And then I'm going to the next 15, 20, 30, 40 cases. Okay? We are charged with looking at the perpetrator's age, their own psychological condition. Were they victims? Had they ever received treatment? Are they acting out based on their own victimization because nobody ever got them help? Okay? I look at what type of sexual contact are we talking about, I have to tell you, I find it very interesting. We are such a sexualized society. I'm sitting on my couch, it's 8 o'clock at night, and I'm seeing a Cialis commercial. If you've had an erection for more than 4 hours, please seek medical treatment. Wow. And everybody seems to be okay with that. People don't seem to get overly offended by that. But yet, you let some little girl say, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And we suddenly, where did that come from? Really? You don't understand where people really don't have a whole lot of understanding about sexual exploration or normal sexual development in children. Now, sticking your penis in somebody is a little bit beyond that. I get it. But we're looking at the type of contact that occurred. This is where I get on my soapbox. Unless the circumstance is really, really warranted, I am not, let me be clear, I am not going to identify a 10-year-old as a child molester or a child abuser with an indicated CPS finding that will stay on his record for 25 years. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it.
I agree with you, by the way.
If
You've got a child under the age of 12 who is using sexually inappropriate behavior, 90% of the time you've got a molested child. And so you have a child or exposed to pornography.
That's right.
I see exposure to pornography as often as I see a molested child.
That's right.
And so to call a child under the age of 12 a child molester is inappropriate. It is not a child welfare case. It is a treatment case. And so those children do need to be referred for assessment and treatment. They do not need to be referred to CPS, in my opinion, in most cases.
But that, well, and I hear what you're saying, it's still a mandated report. They have to call us.
Well, then things have changed because it used to be if it's child on child, CPS would not even take the phone call. That's how it's been forever and ever.
If they're not related, you mean?
No,
Child on child. I get called.
child on child. I've called in myself. We don't take those calls.
Well,
And I'm not saying who, but they don't take those calls. And it's been that way.
is it our county?
I'm not saying.
Well, it would be helpful if you did. Actually,
Turn that recorder off.
let me say this. For years and years and years,